my next guest is around the corner here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Rodrigo Pimentel, who I've seen on Facebook all the time, has contributed to Go Local,
yes,
and now finally here in the studio.
Hello, thank you for having me here, Kate.
I appreciate it. You've been so active on the immigration issue here in Rhode Island, and we're still seeing so much coming out of DC right now, and particularly, I do want to start. We had this conversation talking about how they're addressing legal versus illegal immigration.
Yes.
And recent poll numbers today, again, this is regarding, let's talk about the legislation by Senators Cotton and Perdue now favoring worker skills over family connections and reducing legal immigration by half. What's your response to what they put forth?
All right, so the way they're selling the RAISE Act is what it's called. The RAISE Act is actually, they're selling it as a legislation that would make our system more merit-based, but in reality it is not. In fact, the Information Technology Council, which comprises of Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple, have said that this would actually add more bureaucracy into our immigration system, our already convoluted immigration system. In fact, it would actually make getting an H-1B visa much harder for these companies and for their employees. And of course, H-1B employees' visas have actually been a net gain for America. A recent study came out showing how H-1B visas actually added $431 million to our economy between 1990 and 2010.
So you're armed with the figures here. Again, we're looking at this legislation in DC.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it has any legs?
Alone, I do not think it has any legs. Several Republican Congress members have already come out against it because of how restricted it is towards business. So I think alone, no.
I'm going to bring you a little bit closer, I'm not going to let you scoot out around here. So, again, we were talking about the difference between, excuse me for a second, the difference between addressing legal and illegal
yes.
immigration. What are you seeing from DC in terms of addressing illegal immigration? And give us your vantage point on that.
All right, so from illegal immigration, it looks like that the Trump administration is really pushing to get funding for, of course, additional ICE agents, and actually, he actually did away with a lot of the immigration priorities that President Obama had in place, the Priority Enforcement Program, which actually didn't make it a priority to apprehend undocumented immigrants who haven't committed any crimes. But under the Trump administration, this is now a priority. Everyone is a target from ICE. So Trump is looking to get like 5,000 plus ICE agents. They're also looking to get the border wall built.
So we just had recently, we had Mike Rojo in because there was an event, again,
yes.
looking at this example, it took place in California
yes.
with the detainment of 2 workers out there, and talking about how nationally folks are coming together around this. A while
yes.
back we had Steve Brown from the ACLU
mm-hmm.
talking about, can states really address this on a state-by-state issue, again, addressing sort of a big federal behemoth in terms of ICE. What are you hearing and what are you seeing out there?
So on the state level, remember, immigration is very much a federal issue, an issue that the president has a vast amount of discretion on, which I think we'll get later on today on the show regarding DACA. And it goes both ways. The president can actually act to enforce immigration laws as well as set priorities. The point here that I'm making is that states are actually precluded from actually getting involved in immigration. They can opt out of spending their money on immigration enforcement. As you see, some states and cities are actually trying to become sanctuary states and cities. So how that works is that those municipalities, those states, they can opt to have their local police officers not cooperate with ICE. But it doesn't stop ICE from coming in and, of course, apprehending immigrants.
And you know, you hear that all the time, you hear especially Providence. What's your reaction when you, especially if you hear it from people who don't use it in a positive light, you know, from
mm-hmm.
the side that says, well, immigrants should be, if they're not here legally, deported. What do you respond to them when they say that, especially social media?
Mm. So I guess a lot of people don't really understand how complicated the immigration system is here, especially if someone wants to immigrate legally, and the RAISE Act would not address that. I am for comprehensive immigration reform, which I think a vast majority of Americans actually support in a few polls. And what I think we should realize is that, so I'm an undocumented immigrant myself. I immigrated here at the age of 10 months through no choice of my own. And my parents came here to start a business. And they don't really have a pathway to citizenship because our immigration system right now is so convoluted that without like a family sponsor, who's like an immediate family member who can actually sponsor us, I have no chance of actually obtaining legal residency.
So let's talk a little bit about DACA.
Sure.
We just saw that Democratic Chairman Joe McNamara signed on to
yes.
a letter. You were hitting me on Facebook saying, did you see this? Did you see
yep.
this? talk with folks a little bit. Again, they see it in the news. They might
Yes.
not know. Tell us your personal perspective.
All right, so DACA was implemented in 2012 by the DHS secretary then, Napolitano. She implemented this program to let people like me, who came here as children through no choice of their own, to have a chance to at least legally work and not be afraid to be deported at a whim. Now, this program is actually quite restrictive. You have to be here since June 2007, and you also have to be present on the day that DACA was implemented, also during 2012. So DACA actually has benefited around 780,000 recipients throughout the whole entire country. We have 3,000 DACA eligible immigrants here in Rhode Island. Around 1,200 have applied for DACA. And DACA enables these people to actually obtain jobs, pursue an education. Now, make no mistake, it is not a legal status. So these people cannot use our welfare system. They don't have access to financial aid for college. So they've been paying their own way and making their own life here in America.
And what are the threats under the Trump administration?
All right, so currently, actually, let's go back to then candidate Trump. So candidate Trump actually said that he would revoke DACA on day one. That didn't happen. But earlier this year, he did revoke DAPA, which was actually already subject to an injunction by Judge Hannon. It was part of a lawsuit, Texas versus United States, in 2014.
And DAPA?
So DAPA, that would be for, it would benefit 4 million people. It would be for the parents of American citizen children, so people who've had children here but they haven't had a chance to be sponsored by their children, they would have had a chance to get a work permit under that program.
Okay.
Now that was challenged by Texas. Attorney General of Texas challenged it, and Judge Hannon placed the injunction. Of course, it was actually a very narrow loss for us on that one, because of the 12 judges that heard our case on the circuit and Supreme Court levels, it went 6-6. And of course the Supreme Court went 4-4 on that issue, and it was because of that vacancy.
Okay, so as we're looking at DACA, and as you said, you're impacted by this. Were you surprised that on day one the president didn't revoke it, repeal it as he had promised on the campaign trail?
To be honest, I was quite surprised considering his rhetoric on immigration, especially when he did that event in Phoenix, Arizona.
And so, was there concern literally leading up to his inauguration by folks in the immigration community that literally that day that was going to happen?
We thought it would be like within the first few weeks of his presidency that he would have signed an executive order rescinding DACA.
So where do things stand then? Again, if we're looking at this Republican legislation for the legal side that you think doesn't have legs, again, all of those companies that you had mentioned, you know, have a very diverse workforce, and for them to come out and say that, I mean, do you think that that speaks volumes?
Yes, it does. Also, touching again on DACA, currently DACA is actually subject to another lawsuit on September 5th, I think, by, again, Texas. So Texas is trying to argue that deferred action for childhood arrivals, a program that I have benefited under, is actually unconstitutional. But here's the thing. DACA has actually already faced court challenges from then Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He tried arguing that DACA was luring more immigrants here into the U.S., but the Supreme Court, the lower courts actually threw that out. Now, what Texas is now arguing legally that it costs more money to issue driver's licenses to DACA recipients, and they argued it would cost around over $100 million to issue driver's licenses, which is actually 3 times more than what they've allocated in their state budget.
So talk with us about the cost of that. Okay, so break it down a little bit. I'm not, I'm a little fuzzy on the math here. So for licenses for undocumented immigrants, so how much? $100 million?
That's what they were claiming. But here's the thing: DACA recipients actually pay taxes in the system. I have a social security number issued to me by the SSA. That enables me to actually work and pay taxes in the system. Driver's licenses in Texas are partially subsidized. They're much cheaper than Rhode Island. Okay. Here it's like $59 plus the fees. There it's closer to $20. So
what? We're more expensive than other states?
Yes, we are.
That's a big surprise. Talk with us. You've been very involved with that issue here.
Yes.
And again, coming up this year, again, seeing the rallies, seeing folks turn out. Where do things stand as we stand here? Do you think it will happen in Rhode Island?
So, do you think that we will actually get pro-immigration legislation passed here in Rhode Island?
Specifically licenses.
Licenses?
Yes.
Okay, so in regards to driver's licenses, our main issue regarding that has been pushing it through the House side of the General Assembly, primarily because the Speaker has been opposed to it. House Speaker Mattiello, during his re-election fight, he actually campaigned to the right of his Steve Fry's then. He actually issued he actually sent mailers out saying that he single-handedly, quote, killed driver's licenses for illegal aliens. Yes, a Democrat put that on a campaign mailer and sent it to his Clinton voters.
So are you surprised? I mean, many folks have pointed to how conservative that the speaker is.
Yes.
Were you surprised when you saw that?
I was not surprised at all.
So again, as long as he's speaker, are you not hopeful that anything will transpire, given his role and given his views on the issue?
I think as long as he's speaker, I think it could be possible, but under the current circumstances, unless if he's very vulnerable on the next election again, I think that driver's licenses will be a hard sell.
So you're so involved. You're a community activist. You're politically active.
Yes.
We're here again, August 2017, and we're quickly approaching 2018.
Yes.
What are the issues when you're going to be talking, or folks are going to be talking with candidates here, that you're going to be sort of, asking, what's the litmus test? What are you asking them about that you really want to see where they stand on?
So I asked them where they stand on, of course, driver's licenses. Even though it might not pass now, it's a year-by-year approach. We need to build towards actually being able to pass that. So that's one question that I ask. I also ask their questions on, say, municipal IDs, or asking them what they think of in-state tuition for Dreamers specifically, which we already have codified, but it's not, well, it's actually an administrative decision, but we're looking to codify it.
Okay. So those are sort of the issues that you're going to say?
Yes.
So let's give letter grades. Let's go down let's start from the top. How would you grade Governor Gina Raimondo so far in her administration?
I'd give her a C right now due to her broken promise on driver's licenses, and she's has yet to issue a statement on DACA, even though Attorney General Martin has actually issued a statement on DACA, and so has the chair of the Democratic Party here.
We saw that just last week. So she gets a C. The Attorney General, what do you give the Attorney General?
I will give it, well, it's a holistic point of view. It's not just, is this on just immigration, or is it like...
You do raise a good point. Let's start immigration first and then overall.
All right, good point. Okay, on immigration, I'll give him a B.
Okay. Overall?
Yes. Overall. Oh, I give him a D minus. Mostly because of those other issues that we've had, like regarding Good Samaritan Act, etc. It was really hard to push him on that issue.
So, what are you looking at in 2018? What are you hoping for? And, what are you looking to get, really excited about?
So what I'm looking to get excited about is actually defending DACA from that lawsuit. And part of that has to do with getting interveners on board on that lawsuit, so DACA can be upheld. In my opinion, it is a very constitutional order, considering that in Arizona versus the United States, that's court case actually ruled that the federal government has broad discretion on immigration, including letting certain immigrants stay here.
Do you have a law degree?
No, I do not.
Are you looking to go to law school?
Not yet. I'm actually a computer science major.
Very good. Well, again, you're so active. Again, you've written for us.
Yes.
And we're seeing this going on in Washington right now. So I said, if I get the opportunity to have Rodrigo in, definitely want to do so. Is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you think viewers should know as we stand here, as what's going on in the country right now?
Sure. So let's take a look at some of the polling. Kate linked me over Facebook actually a poll showing how a large percentage of Americans actually support the RAISE Act.
This was from Political, and this was the Morning Consult poll, which the Morning Consult poll has come under fire a number of times.
Yes, and I linked to another poll from Forward. It's an immigration advocacy group that Mark Zuckerberg is leading. That poll showed that 71% of Americans actually support DACA. And if Republican voters are told that Trump has actually continued DACA, that goes up to 75%. So I think there is some consensus that our immigration system is broken, just that voters just don't know what they actually want out of it.
And this Mark Zuckerberg poll, do you think Mark's going to run for president?
I actually do not know that.
There's all this speculation that he's interested, having this big group that's Facebook that he might be looking to run. So what's your advice to people when they see these numbers then? Kind of look closely at the underlying issues and have conversations with people about what this actually means.
Have conversations on how broken our immigration system is. Talk to undocumented immigrants, talk to legal immigrants, and see what they went through to come here to the United States.
Okay, well, I wanted to especially talk with you about DACA, talking about what's going on in Washington. Of course, keeping an eye on what's going to be going on in 18 here, so I'm sure we'll be talking in short order, but I appreciate your coming in today. Rodrigo Pimentel.
Yes, thank you so much.
Again, we've only seen each other on Facebook, but finally got you into the studio.